And this is the first I'd ever heard from her about wanting to travel solo. Between 1 and 2 weeks ago, we started to hear from our daughter Eden, who is 17 years old, that she wanted to take a bike trip from our house to Washington, D.C., which is, I think, about 500 or 600 miles.
Yeah.
And this is the first I'd ever heard from her about wanting to travel solo at all, wanting to ride a bike at all. So it kind of came out of the blue.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man, yeah. When she first brought it up, I was like, that's cute. Totally didn't take it seriously. And then she brought it up again, and then I realized that she was dead serious. So then I started to freak out a little bit internally. My knee-jerk reaction was, that's okay as long as you take someone with you. Just like kind of all these things that would make me feel better about her going. And then when I realized the nature of the trip she wanted to take, which she wanted to go solo. You know, I think I tried to convince her to do a road trip. Maybe I'll take you. And she's like, no, that's not what I want. And I realized that's really isn't what she wanted. I think she wanted something that was gonna be hard mentally and physically, and gonna be adventurous. She'd have to figure things out on her own. So after a couple of days, I processed through it, and I realized that she needs to make this decision for herself. I just kind of came to accept her and what she wanted, and perhaps even what she needed. But I had all these misgivings and all these other voices in my head that that were super loud. Like right when she said it, there was like, that's not safe, blah, blah, blah. Like that's not what nice girls do. I mean, that's not actually the thought that went through my head, but I really do think that that is what our culture thinks. And I think that is therefore what a voice was in my head. I was able to then see other things that were important about this, and not just let those other voices drown all those things out. And that is, I mean, there's just a lot. I mean, she could learn so much from this, right? Like this could be a defining trip of her young adult life. I don't know, like, how do I know? And I don't want to be the one to take that away from her. Am I scared? Hell yeah, I'm scared. I don't pray anymore, but I plan on praying every single day to maybe the universe, and I plan on like texting my friend Kate and being like, you know, I'm struggling, don't know, freaking out here. There's a lot. Like,
what are you worried about?
I'm worried about something happening to her. So I guess that would be like
what?
Her getting hit by a car, which happens. That's happened to us. But she's wearing a helmet.
This would be her second time getting hit by a car.
Right. The first time was in utero. Oh God. Okay. And then the second thing I'd be worried about is another human doing her harm, which I guess both of those would be another human doing her harm, but like getting kidnapped or raped or, you know, all this like shit that you hear about in the news. Really, would I be able to live with myself if that happened? Like having to really ask those hard questions. And honestly, even if I couldn't live with myself, if that happened, that's not something I should put on her and therefore stop her from her doing her thing just so that I could live with myself. No, I can't do that. Like, I can't even live with myself for doing that. So it's just like, I just realized, like, I have to let her go. I mean, she's almost 18, and when are you gonna let your kids go? And another big fear is if something happened, like, we would look really bad. Like, let's face it, in our culture, everyone will look at us and be like, it's your fault. You should have stopped her. You should have raised her differently. I don't know, something.
I think getting hit by a car is far more likely than getting kidnapped.
I do.
Or raped or
I do.
beat
I
up
think so
or
too.
whatever. And
yeah, I think so too.
Getting hit by a car is a risk that you face no matter what age you are.
Right.
I mean, we were grown adults when we got hit by a car.
Barely. We were 22.
And if you're 18, as long as you're smart and stay on the side of the road, which is all you can do, and wear visible clothing, it's like, so if you're gonna bike, it's really outside of your control. So it's just one of the hazards of doing it. So the only other option, if you never want to get hit by a car, is like really never to bike, or only bike on like very limiting paths.
I was just thinking, like, the legality of this, and she's not 18 yet. She'll be 18 in 6 months. If she gets hit by a car, then do we get charged with child endangerment, and then our kids get taken away from us? I mean,
I'll say she ran away from home.
we'll burn this tape.
I think it's very common to feel like parenting is really this completely shaping activity where you need to, like, very proactively keep your child safe and do all these things. And then when they leave, it really threatens that. I think having that viewpoint of parenting makes it really, really hard to let kids go.
And it makes it hard to see the other side, because I said all that stuff about how I'm scared to death and all of my fears and stuff. But also, when all those things kind of quieted down and I was able to see that there's this other side of me that's actually really excited for her. And I feel actually really proud as a parent that she has the confidence and the guts and whatever the wherewithals of, like, figuring stuff out to be able to do something like this. When I was 17, I would not have been able to even get to that point at all. And so I do feel proud because of that.
When I heard it, I totally get it.
Well, okay, this is the thing is, when you started doing a bike trip when you were 20, right before we got married, actually. You went down the coast of
I biked
Washington, Oregon,
Seattle down
California.
to San Francisco. I had to buy a tent to do it.
You biked with someone else.
I bought a bike. I bought a mountain bike. I didn't know what I was even doing.
Yeah.
And we just left, and we had no idea, like, what we were doing. I mean, we didn't have cell phones. We did have maps.
Yeah.
But we had never biked. I had never camped before. It was just like so exciting and such an adventure. And it launched us into our next bike trip, which is where we discovered the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah.
And I think it got us into just...
So I think I had your reference point. So then I thought, well, she needs to have someone with her, because you did. But then I thought of her personality, and her personality is really different from yours in some ways. She's way more introverted. She's totally fine being alone. I don't want to take that away from her. Like, she wants a certain kind of experience.
I just think there's so much value that can come of allowing kids to find where their limits are and to feel like scared, basically. But she's probably gonna get lost. Like, that's a fact. She will get lost.
Yeah.
Especially because preparation-wise, she doesn't have a phone, which we'll talk about, because I think there's all sorts of people that'll freak out about that. But she doesn't have a phone, so she's not gonna have. She kind of has GPS.
She has maps.
But it's like not connected to data plan.
We're back in 1998 now.
It is. It's 1998. Yeah, she's gonna get lost. She's gonna have to figure it out herself. She's gonna have to be self-reliant. She's gonna have to make decisions about how do I push further in the rain, or do I stop and
Yeah.
get food? Or if these people invite me into their house, do I say yes or no?
Right.
I think those are amazing opportunities.
I told her, I said, follow your gut. Like, if someone gives you the willies, like, leave them alone. If you feel really good about someone, great, go with it. I mean, can your gut make mistakes? Yeah, but I think it's the best that we have to go by. I mean, it's either that or you trust everyone or you don't trust anyone.
I say follow the food.
Sure, yeah. You're like, gut, shut up. I want some pizza.
I mean, go with the gut. Sounds...
Well, I guess
I
what's underneath that is trust your instincts, because I think that is something that I think is so valuable to believe as a human being. I guarantee you, if this was our son 7, let's say he was 17, and he was planning on this trip, I think we would still get some flack for it, but not nearly as much as we're gonna get for Eden, because she's a woman. And that, like, I get that, but I also am just like, it makes me mad, and it makes me want to just push back on that, because...
Wait, you are giving her the same flack.
I know, but I pushed back on myself. Like, after I processed through, I realized that I was actually feeding into this sexist narrative of there are different adventures and different events and different things that men can do that women can't do, you know?
And I think a lot of people are gonna hop on here, maybe not a lot, but I think a few, and say, bad stuff can happen, you're asking for it, robbery, rape, all this stuff. And to that I would say, you know, you're entitled to that opinion, but I think a lot of people just watch the news too much. And the chances and statistics are not high that someone is going to intentionally take advantage or harm her. It's not to say it couldn't happen, but the chance of it happening in real life is so much lower than what we get exposed to in the media, that the amount of fear that we feel is disproportionate. So if you're, so don't get on our comment section and caution us and tell us about what you see on the news and try and act like it's going to impact our real life, because that's not how we make decisions.
I just believe that there's more people in the world that want to do good than people in the world that want to do harm.
So one of the things we're practicing as parents now is just like letting go. You know, it was a little scary at first for me to think, oh, shouldn't she have a phone? But I just think historically, and that robs part of the adventure too.
Everyone she ever meets is going to have a phone too, so if they seem like an okay person.
Do you remember on our first bike trip, this is a crazy story, on our first bike trip, it was Mother's Day, and we wanted to go call our moms, but this is like really before cell phones.
This was 2002.
So we were staying in this...
Only 18 years ago.
We had our tent pitched in this abandoned house lot, and we go knock on the neighbors next door, just like you would back then when you needed something. You're like, hey, excuse me, can we give you some money and we can use our phone to just make one phone call?
Yeah.
And we had a Dove, she was 1.
Yeah.
And these people invite us in, we use their phone, and then they offered us a place to stay because I think they felt so bad for us. But this was all from borrowing someone's phone. It was so much better than
they had a baby
using
too.
a cell phone.
Yeah.
And I remember they made us dinner. And,
oh yeah.
It was like
a really nice dinner.
I mean, so these stories that we're telling almost 20 years later, all from not having a phone. Really, like the main reason about having a phone that is hard is, when I think about it, I think it presents an illusion of control. Like, if she needs something, she can call us and we can come. As if there's anything that we can do driving there for 5 hours that she can't do already. I mean, I guess she'd have more access to call 911 quicker, but the idea that we can save her or help her is a parenting idea that I think is usually a myth. And more, like you said in the beginning, it's more to give us peace of mind. Like, I need to know what's going on, so I'm gonna make you carry this phone. Her
ending point is a friend of mine, Kate, if you remember, she helped us out on the Appalachian Trail. And it's only an 8-hour drive from here to there. So at any point, Kate's like, you know, we're either you or I are 4 hours or less away from her if, like, we need to go get her.
And Kate has a phone.
Yes.
Okay.
And Eden talked to Fresh Ground, and Fresh Ground has a lot of experience with biking, and I really appreciated his, like, just like, he didn't and she even said this, it was really nice that he didn't question me. He just was like, what do you need? And just gave her a bunch of great advice and gave her the best route to take.
What if something bad happens? How would we feel and why? I've thought about this question a lot, mostly from our outdoor endeavors. I remember when we first started hiking the Wonderland Trail, this 95-mile loop in Washington. I remember thinking, oh, what if a kid falls off a cliff? I know what people are gonna say. People are gonna say like, see, I told you so. You shouldn't have taken your kids outdoors. And then because we're doing this outlandish activity that no one else is doing, like hiking out in the rain with our kids, everyone's gonna say, see, that's preventable. It's your fault. And the worst thing is if we would tell that to ourselves and be like, okay, fine, we're never gonna go outside again, or it's our fault. We spend the rest of our lives beating us up. I don't think that's how I would see it. This mindset that really, where I learned to think through these things was actually my years as a professional blackjack player, where I would go to casinos and play the game of blackjack professionally to make money as a job. And the way it works is you learn this mathematical system, and then you go to the casino and you have no control over whether you win or lose. In fact, you're kind of expected to lose 49 times out of 100 and win 51 times out of 100. But you know that as long as you know the mathematical system, the wins and losses will even out eventually. Now, what was really hard to do was, like when you go and you lose, like you could lose $1,000 or $10,000, it's easy to go home and focus on the loss and feel like, what did I do wrong? That was so dumb.
And it would paralyze you.
Yeah, you're like, I shouldn't have done that. See, this doesn't work. But you're totally fixating on the wrong thing. You're focused on the result in the micro term instead of the big picture result. And those focusing on the short-term result, not only was it not helpful, it actually could prevent you from becoming a good player because you're focusing on something that you can't really control. Like when we release Eden to do this bike trip, there's so much we can't control. I mean, we could like keep her home for the rest of her life, but we want to make decisions that when done 10 times or 100 times or 1,000 times over the course of 20 years, build towards a result that we're proud of. And in those times, we're gonna have some losses. We could have kids get hurt, have broken bones. People can even die. Like that's just a fact of the matter. And it's hard to say. And I've had to think about this, not with the kids, but even with myself. As I've done mountain climbing, as I've done things, you know, we can like calculate the risk, but to say there's no risk ever. And by the way, this happens every single time someone gets in a car. It's just that usually we're not aware of it.
Well, and if someone gets in a car accident, it's usually not anyone's, like you don't look at the parents and be like, you shouldn't have put your kid in a car. What
That's just
thinking?
because it's normal.
Yeah.
But it's just as risky.
Right.
So anyways, all that to say, just because something bad happens, it doesn't mean that we're gonna regret everything or say, oh, we shouldn't have done that. That's not the way we see it. That's not the way it works. And I think having that mindset going into it is really helpful because I feel like a lot of people parent just to avoid
the worst case
scenario and what their friends would say and what their family would think, which in my personal opinion is actually a terrible way to parent because you're gonna be missing out on so many opportunity and just basing your opinion on what other people might think. And that's why it was a no-brainer for me to say, yeah, it's your choice. And I'll give you some things to think about. You know, wear visible clothing and go on the right side of the road and, you know, use a flashing light and some things that are like, would I consider, you know, highly worth it? You know, if she really wants to do it, to tell her to stay home just so I have peace of mind, I don't want to do that. But what do you guys think? And like I said, don't use the comments just to caution us about something you saw in the news. But how do you guys wrestle through this?
Yeah, like I'd appreciate comments that weren't advice that you were trying to give us. I'd appreciate more of how do you think through these issues, and is this something that you've thought about?
How have you let your kids go, or what's been the hardest part? All right. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time. You want to say bye?
Shabbat Shalom, actually.
Oh yeah, it's Friday. You want to say Shabbat Shalom?
To the camera.
Shabbat Shalom.
It's easy to waste our time. And if we're doing it, our kids are doing it. We wrote a book about how we created a schedule and transformed our family's panic into purpose, all in 1 week.
It's time to do a workout.
The book has all the tools and mindsets that we use and is basically the best of content of like 1,000 videos, and you can read it in less than an hour. Are you ready to change your week?